Hey guys, so I'm just waiting for some people to join and we'll get started. So we're still waiting for people to join. Okay, so let's get started. So hi everyone, I'm Yasith. I'm a software engineer at Google. I work with the Google Home team, mostly working on Android apps. So I'll start with a little background about myself. If you do have questions, feel free to just type it out in the chat, and I'll try to answer. So I graduated from University of Toronto about 3 years ago, where I did a major in computer science and a minor in mathematics. So during my undergrads, I did an internship at a game development company in Toronto, and then 2 other internships at Google. For my first internship, I was a site reliability engineering intern. I worked with the Google Ads statistics team in Google headquarters in Mountain View. For the second one, I worked at Google Waterloo with the Google Fiber team, working on Android apps. So after I graduated from university, I worked in Amazon in Toronto, where I mostly worked on backend servers. And after about an year, I came back to Google, working on the Google Wi-Fi team, again on Android apps. And I've been here for almost 2 years now. Yeah, so that's like a brief overview of myself. So I still don't see any questions, so I'll just do a brief review of the Google application process and how it looks like. So usually after you apply to Google, if they decide to go forward with the application, you might get a phone call from a recruiter where they will do a small screen, and then you will get 2 phone interviews, which is 1 hour each with Google Software Engineers, where they will ask you problem-solving questions, mostly small algorithm-based questions. And if you pass those 2 phone screens, then they call you for on-site interviews, which is where they fly you to a Google office, and it's a whole day of interviews. So you will get 6 interviews for the day, and each interview will be around 1 hour. So yeah, so after those interviews, if they decide to go forward with you, they have something called a hiring committee, where they go through all the feedback from all of your interviews. So it should be around 8 interviews, including the 2 phone screens and the 6 on-site interviews. If they decide to go forward with your application at that point, they do an executive review and give you an offer. So that's how the Google application process looks like. So, okay, I have a question. So, Lankaratnaik asks, backend developer or front-end developer? What has great potential? Can you please share your view? So I think both has a lot of potential. I guess it comes down to your preference and what you like. So I've done both backend development and mobile front-end development. I haven't really done any web front-end development. So I guess one thing I enjoy about backend development is you have the potential to work with large distributed systems and can have some interesting challenges, and along with those challenges, you will also be able to explore new technologies and maybe have some really good impact. So front end is also very interesting because I think I prefer mostly to work with the front end, because then people are interacting directly with what you build, and if you have good analytics, then you will be able to see how many people use a feature that you build, and I feel like it's very rewarding for me. I also enjoy making things perform well on mobile. Okay, so we have another question. Gayashan asks, what are the languages or frameworks I work with? So right now, I mostly work in Java. Since I'm working on Android apps. So for frameworks, I on the side, like I have some personal projects and I use Flutter. So Flutter is a mobile framework where you can build apps for both iOS and Android. I find it to be very interesting, and you can have very high performance apps that you can make with Flutter. Okay, there's a lot of questions coming in. Okay, so Harindu asks, what are the tools and languages you're using at Google on machine learning? So Google mostly uses TensorFlow for machine learning applications, and they have their own proprietary frameworks for training and serving those TensorFlow models. And for the languages, some teams use C++ for TensorFlow, and there are some teams who use Python for TensorFlow. I guess it depends on the amount of data you have, and if you're working with a lot of data and you want your training to be like your data collection and data processing and training to be fast, I think they will use C++. Otherwise, if that's not really a high concern, they will use Python. I think most teams prefer to use Python because it's easier to iterate with Python. Okay, Jude asks, us as undergraduates from Sri Lanka, what sort of a profile we should have to get a chance to become an intern at Google? Okay, let me think for a bit on this one. I think the one of the things Google looks for is like if you have participated in programming competitions, or if you have any good side projects going on that could be interesting to them. So you want the recruiter who's initially looking at your application to be impressed with it, and you want them to feel like you have what it takes to pass the interviews. So the interviews are mostly algorithmic in nature, and also some design problems. So if you have participated in some programming competitions, and if you have some side projects going on, I think that could be very useful to get noticed. Also, I think one of the best ways to get an interview is to make connections and get a referral from someone who knows your work and can vouch for it. Okay, were you able to get to Google with your first application? So I did get an offer from my first application. That was for my first year internship. However, there were some problems with getting a US visa on time. So I didn't get to Google after my first year. So I worked at a different company for my first internship. But my second year, I had enough time, and I was able to get my internship. Okay, Isuru Nuwantilaka asks, how did you get an internship at Google? Can you give some facts? Okay, yeah, sure. So I was at a conference for undergraduates, and a friend of mine who I met through a programming competition, he was interning at Google, and I met him and he gave me a referral. Then I had 2 phone interviews with Google. So for the internship process, you only have 2 phone interviews, and then they decide if they want to hire you as an intern or not. So Harinder asks, Flutter over Ionic or Xamarin advantages. So honestly, I haven't used Ionic or Xamarin, so I can't give a proper comparison. I like Flutter because you can iterate very fast with Flutter, and Flutter is built to be reactive. I like reactive programming, and I think it's reactive programming works well for real-time applications, and that's one of the reasons I like Flutter. But I can't give a proper comparison between Ionic and Xamarin. Shalita asks, I saw in a lot of places Google is testing DSA skills at interviews. Google SEs are working more with maths. So I'm going to assume DSA means data structures and algorithms. Yeah, so almost all the interviews, it's mostly testing your problem-solving knowledge. I guess where the data structures and algorithms are coming in is, so when you have a problem to solve, it's easier if you're familiar with algorithms and data structures, because then you can come up with a very efficient solution. So Google SEs are working more with maths. Honestly, not really. I don't think we do much mathematics day to day, but it's that having the background of algorithms and data structures, so you know not to do something inefficient. So I think that's why Google tests for data structures and algorithms. Basically, what are the things Google's asking when they are interviewing us? Can you give us some clues? So I can't go into specifics of the problems that Google asks during the interviews, but yeah, let me talk a bit about how you can have like a good chance of passing Google interviews. So as I mentioned before, Google interviews are going to be mostly algorithmic problem solving questions, and maybe a couple of design questions where they ask you to design the architecture for like a little complex project. So write a lot of code, work on a project in longer term of your own, and a project where you can make most of the architectural decisions by yourself. So I feel like that helps a lot with getting ready for design interviews. Most people find that challenging. If you haven't done any architectural choices before and you haven't had the chance to think about those things, it's hard to come up with solutions. So write a lot of code, work on a project in the longer term of your own, and also read code for good open source projects. I think one of the best ways to get good at programming is to write a lot of code, and probably the second best way to get good at programming is to read good code. Also, I think doing problem solving competition help a lot. So I personally used to do a lot of top coder competitions. I always did Code Jam and the Hacker Cup. So this experience where you try to solve a problem with a very strict time limit will help you a lot during the interviews. And most of the questions they ask you during the Google interviews are very similar to those top coder and Code Jam competition questions. Okay, so Jude asks, if I have 2 referrals, can I use them 2 times, or am I still allowed only 1 chance? So pick your strongest referral for your first application, and then when you get started with the application process, they will ask you if you know any other people who can give you a referral, and then in that way you can have both referrals for that one application. Also about using your referrals more than once. So Google generally allows you to apply every year. So if you try and don't get a chance, then you can apply after 1 year. So if you can, and if you feel like you want to give it a try, I recommend applying, because you can always come back a year later and you can apply. So Charit asks, tell us a bit about Google work culture. So I find that Google has a very relaxed work culture. The time is very flexible. You don't have set work hours. You have access to the Google offices 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And you can come in and go as you like. So as long as you get your work done, they don't really care about how much time you spend in the office or at your desk. So personally, this is what my day-to-day looks like. I go in around 10 a.m. I review what I have to do and make a plan for the day. Usually in the morning, I reply to any emails that I have to reply to. And if I want to follow up with someone, I set up some meetings. And then our team usually have the stand-up meeting. So you usually have to go to the stand-up meeting every day. This is where you give updates about what you have been working on and what you're going to be doing next. So most people in the team, they are working on different projects at the same time. So the stand-up meeting helps kind of let everyone else know what's going on. Then I have lunch, and after lunch, that's when I do most of my coding, and I also do code reviews for people in my team. Then I leave around 5:30. That's my usual day. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I usually tend to leave early. So yeah, that's how the work life is at Google. I feel like we get a good work-life balance at Google, and the Google culture promotes work-life balance. So you get things like you have unlimited sick days. So if you're sick or if you're feeling unwell, you don't have to come into work. So I feel like it really helps you work, and they only expect you to work when you want to work and you feel productive. And as long as you get your projects done on time, you don't have to worry. Can you share? So Dulan asks, can you share with us your resume, or maybe provide us some guidelines on how to prepare one when applying for Google? I think I might have a resume online. I can post it. I can post it on the event page after the talk is done, and you guys can take a look. I'll just make a note. Yeah. Also, there's a book called The Google Resume. I feel like that's a good point. That's a good book to read when preparing your resume for Google. Google. Yeah. I can post the link to that book in the event page as well. It's written by the same person who wrote Cracking the Coding Interview, which is also a good book to read if you want to prepare for interviews. Okay. All right. Let's see what other questions we have. So Yasas asks, do you have to be exceptionally talented to work at Google? How's the working environment at Google compared to places you worked before? So do you have to be exceptionally talented? I mean, I think you can work at Google if you work hard and improve your skills. I feel like that's something everyone can do. For example, when I was getting ready for my Google interviews, I studied and practiced every day for at least 2 hours a day for about 2 months before my interviews. And also, I'm always working on side projects, trying to improve myself. So I don't think you need to have any natural talents or like born with any specific talents to work at Google. You just have to improve your skills. And if you improve your skills enough, you can definitely get hired at Google. And the working environment at Google compared to places you worked before. So I worked at a game development startup and at Amazon before joining Google. I think Google has the most relaxed culture of all of them, which is like you control your own projects and you set your own priorities. Maybe in like the first 3 months, your manager will kind of guide you and tell you you should be working on this, and like they will give you like some small projects to work on. But after that, you are supposed to kind of control what you're doing on your own. You should know like what your team's priorities are, and like if there are any incoming feature requests, and you assign yourself tasks and you prioritize them and work on them, and you just provide updates on what's going on with the projects you work on to your manager. So this is very different from what I saw when I worked in the startup and at Amazon, where they have like very specific tasks and they assign them to you every 2 weeks. But I think Amazon's also very flexible on like when you come into work and when you leave and things like that. Okay, let's see. What are the domains currently Google is researching on? I mean, honestly, I'm not sure about the specifics, but I'm pretty sure they're researching on like a lot of domains. I know like machine learning and AI is one of the big ones. Also, augmented reality. I don't really know what else to say about this one. I think the answer is like everything. Google's researching everything. What is the job role hierarchy at Google? So for software engineers, you can actually keep leveling up without having to go to management. So you start off as a software engineer, and you can go to software engineer 2, software engineer 3, and then you can become a senior software engineer. Then there's staff software engineer, senior staff software engineer, and there's a couple more ones after that. I can't remember the titles off the top of my head, but yeah, that's how it works. And if you want to know about like the hierarchy of like who I'm reporting to and stuff, so usually all software engineers have a software engineering manager, and those software engineering managers, they were software engineers before. So I think most, or like even all of software engineering managers at Google, they were software engineers before and got promoted to I guess it's not really a promotion. So after you become a senior software engineer, you have the choice to transition into management, or you can continue as what we call an individual contributor. So you have your software engineers, and then you have the software engineering managers, and they will in turn report to more software engineering managers and maybe to a director who will report to a VP, who will report to a senior VP, and senior VPs all report to the CEO. So Charit asks, what major researches are you engaged in, if you can share them? So at Google, I don't do any research, but on my own, I try to learn machine learning, and I also try to read some machine learning papers that's published. There are also reading groups at Google where people get together and try to read and understand machine learning papers that's published. So I go to one of those reading groups. Nothing too interesting on the research side from me. Okay, another question. What would you consider a disadvantage in being employed at Google compared to others? Okay, that's a hard question. Honestly, I feel like Google's the best place I worked at so far. I guess, but I guess I can think of some disadvantages. When you're working at a small company, you get a lot more like knowledge and information about what's going on at a company level, which you don't really get at Google. Also, you get to wear many hats when you're working for a startup. You can work on the front end, the back end, and even like small design stuff on your own. So you can like kind of spread your knowledge and spread the exposure you get. Whereas like if you work at a big company like Google, you're mostly kind of focusing on one thing. And you have to go out of your way to learn other things. Harindu asks, what are your thoughts on online MOOCs? I love them. I think it's a great idea. I personally have done a bunch of Udacity courses. And I've also done Andrew Ng's machine learning course when it just came out. I think honestly it's one of the best things that happened in like the past maybe 5 or 6 years. It lets everyone, regardless of where they're located, to learn on their own, and I think it's a great thing. And I feel like it's very useful too. I probably learned a lot of things from the machine learning MOOC. Okay, let's see. Yes, I answered most of these questions. Amazon or Google? I think, I guess it's a personal preference. I prefer working at Google. I like the more relaxed atmosphere, and you can pace yourself to go a little slower. Whereas at Amazon, they try to move forwards very fast, and that can put a little bit of stress on yourself. But yeah, I also Amazon is known to be very thrifty. They don't spend a lot of money on making so I guess that's compared to Google. Compared to Google, Google spends a lot on having a very nice, cozy office environment. You have spaces to sleep at if you're feeling sleepy. There's a couple of rooms and what we call nap pods where you can go and sleep in. And you have lounges where you can just go and relax. They have a bunch of gaming rooms. So Google spends a lot on making sure like you have a really happy work environment. So I like that. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so Vidra asks, how have you developed your algorithmic skills? What are the sources that we can simply understand those algorithms? So I think I mostly developed my algorithm skills through programming competitions. So when I was in Sri Lanka, I participated in the NSSC and IOI. So that's National School Software Competition and International Olympiad in Informatics when I was in school. So that kind of helped with for me to learn algorithms. I also participate in programming competitions such as Top Coder or Code Jam, which is helpful for improving your algorithm skills. So what are the sources that we can use to simply understand those algorithms? I think most of the algorithms, you have to use them, you have to implement them, and then you also have to use them in a proper context to understand. So I think that's where the programming competitions help, because you have a problem which requires you to come up with an algorithm or use an algorithm to solve. Also, some of those questions might require you to take an existing algorithm and modify it so it's appropriate for that question. I feel like that's where you get most of your understanding, when trying to modify an algorithm slightly to get the desired result, because that requires you to understand the algorithm properly. So yeah, just how to keep using them. Okay. How many Sri Lankans are with you at Google? I'm not sure. So there is a Google group for Sri Lankans at Google, but I don't think all the Sri Lankans at Google are in that group. So I think we have around 20 members, and I think I know around 6 other engineers who are Sri Lankan. Yeah, sorry, I don't have like a very accurate answer for that. Gayashan asks, based on your experience, do you think professional certifications are a positive thing or a negative thing when joining Google? So I don't think it's either. I don't think the professional certifications matter too much or at all when joining Google. I mean, you can do them if you feel like it's going to help you improve your knowledge, but having that certification by itself, I don't think it counts so much as a positive or as a negative. I mean, they certainly wouldn't think having a certification is a negative thing. Yeah. Okay. And Buddhi asks, hi, could you please tell us whether educational qualifications are strictly considered by Google when recruiting employees? Is there any hope when your bachelor's degree belongs to a different area and your work experience and professional qualifications are completely different from your educational background? Yeah, sure, I can answer. So the short answer is you don't have to have any specific degree, or you don't even need to have a degree to get hired at Google. I personally know a lot of people at Google who don't have a university degree. So yeah, and I also know a lot of people at Google who have math degrees and who has physics degrees at Google. So yeah, so your degree doesn't matter, and you don't even require a degree. I mean, I'm not saying that having a degree doesn't help. It certainly helps you to get all the computer science knowledge and the algorithmics and data structure knowledge that's required. But I feel like you can always learn those things from the internet, and you can improve your skills by just practicing or trying out programming competitions. Also, if you don't have a degree, you might have to work on some open source projects or make some projects on your own to get noticed. Because I feel like that getting noticed part might be a little harder when you don't have a degree. Okay, Harry asked tabs or spaces. No, spaces, yeah. Well, I always use spaces. But I have mapped my tab to be 2 spaces. That's what I prefer. Yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Okay. Dulan asks, other than development, is there special units for teaching or lecturing? So, Google, as far as I know, they don't hire any teachers or lecturers specifically. So, software engineers, they teach courses at Google to other Googlers. We have this system where you can sign up for courses, and you can also sign up to teach courses by yourself. And they're all like regular software engineers who teach on their own time. Does Google hire people with creative degrees? Yeah, they do. We also have UX researchers and UX designers who work on all the user experience stuff. For example, I'm not sure if you are familiar with material design. So material design is developed by UX engineers and UX researchers. Since I work on mobile development, I also work closely with UX researchers. Yeah, so yeah, you can get hired at Google with creative degrees. Okay, Vidura asks, do you have any idea to have a coding bootcamp for ACM ICPC when you come to Sri Lanka next time? Sure. I mean, I'm down to doing any boot camps or anything like that. If you guys want to organize something like that. Is there something you don't like about Google? Something you'd like to see Google do different? Interesting. Let's see. I mean, honestly, I like working at Google a lot, and I don't see many negatives in what Google does. But I think one thing that stands out to me is we can always improve on customer support, especially when it comes to supporting products which has millions of users. I feel like if you have an issue with Gmail or something like that, it's really hard to get customer support for that. So I think that's something Google can improve on. Is native mobile development still happening in large-scale apps? Yeah, I think for large-scale apps specifically, native is very important, especially because when for large-scale apps you have very different ranges of like hardware. So not just for Android, even for iOS, you need to do a lot of optimizations to make sure that your users are getting a good experience. This is also very important in what we call the NBU, the next billion users. I think Nuwan, who did the talk before kind of touched on this. So NBU is basically India, Indonesia, and Brazil, where they have mostly entry-level phones and older phones. So in order for your apps to be accessible by all the users, wherever in the world they are, and they might have very varying kinds of internet connection, you have to optimize your apps specifically for those cases, and there's nothing better than native development to help with that. Google or Amazon, which one has better R&D? I mean, I guess it depends a lot in like which R&D group you are in and stuff like that. I can't really talk about the R&D stuff at Google, but I guess I mean, yeah, I don't have a good answer for this. I mean, Amazon has amazing R&D, and so does Google. So yeah, it's really hard to say which one is the best. Flutter or React Native? I personally prefer Flutter. So the Flutter's rendering pipeline is different from React Native, and so with Flutter, it's designed to be reactive from the bottom up, and it renders like 60 frames per second, and it has a rendering loop very similar to like video games. So you can have very performant and reactive responsive apps when you use Flutter. Also, they have some solid, good built-in components that you can easily use, whereas with Flutter, you might have to do a lot of styling on your own. Okay, let's see. React Native or Android Studio? I mean, I guess it depends on your use case, right? So if you don't have a lot of time and you want to serve both Android and iOS users, go with like a cross-platform solution like React Native or Flutter. Otherwise, I basically use native development on Android, so I think I prefer that. What languages should I learn if I want to work for Google? Python, C++, or Java? So those three are the languages that's most prevalent at Google: Python, C++, and Java. For interviewing, I prefer to use Python because then you can focus mostly on your logic and your thinking, whereas with C++ or Java, you have to worry about the other verbosity that you get with those languages. Okay, Azim asks, apart from free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how else does Google spoil you? Google spoils you in a lot of ways. So you have like free snacks, free coffee and stuff like that. You have some lounges if you want to relax. And if you want anything for your workspace, there's a separate team at Google, and they have that team in every office, and you can just send them a message and they will help you right away. Like you can maybe change your chair or like request like a different chair, or I don't know, like they will even like get you visual barriers and sound barriers if you feel like you're getting too much noise like at your desk. They want to make you as productive as you can be when you're at work, and I think they do a great job at that. Can you share the name of the internal code it is that Google uses? I don't think I can share any internal information. But again, like people at Google use different kinds of editors for different things. And I personally use Android Studio with Vim integration, and yeah, I think the most used editor at Google is Vim, and then followed by Emacs, and followed by IntelliJ. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question without revealing any internal code names. What's the best thing about working at Google? I think the best thing about working at Google is the openness and the culture of being open. So, for example, I can go in and look up any Google code base and any Google project design documentation and find out why they're doing like different things. And I think this helps when it comes to collaboration between teams and to make sure we don't repeat ourselves too much, because as a big company, there's going to be a lot of people at different places who might be doing the same thing. And yeah, with the openness, it helps collaboration and things like that. Also, it's pretty cool to go and see the code for the Google front page, which is visited by probably millions of people every day. Also, one other thing that's really cool about working at Google is you get to interact with very intelligent people and share ideas with them and know about like their thinking and stuff like that. When doing native Android development, what's the recommended software architecture to use? So right now, I think the recommended architecture to use is use live data with view models. So that nicely decouples everything, and you don't get any of the life cycle issues when you do it like this. So it's very similar to the model view presenter design pattern. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. If that doesn't, you can reply again, and I will go further into details. How does Google hire interns? Is this purely based on the GPA? So I think having a high GPA helps to get noticed, but I don't think they care too much about your GPA. So the intern hiring process goes like this. You apply to be an intern, and you should probably apply about maybe even close to like a year before you want to do the internship. Let's say like 8 months before you want to do an internship, especially if you want to intern during the North America summer season. So if you want to intern from May to August, you should apply in the September of the previous year, because it's a very competitive season and there's a lot of intern applications. So you want to apply early, and they will have a couple of phone interviews for you to do. And if you pass both those interviews, they will put you in a phase which is called host matching. This is where you get matched to a project that another Googler is hosting. So for all the interns, they work mainly with one other person who comes up with the project for the intern to do. That person is called the host, and there's a matching process between the intern and the host, and when you find a good match, you will get a placement. Does Google sponsor international students for the H1B? Yes, they do. Yeah, so yeah, Google does that, and Google will also sponsor the green card after that. That's if you're working in the US. And why Google beat Yahoo in the war for the internet? I'm not sure. I don't think I'm qualified to answer this one. Okay, so Naveen wants me to explain the architecture a bit more. So the idea is to decouple your logic, which should be in the view model, from the actual view itself. So the activity itself should be able to get lifecycle callbacks. So for example, the screen rotations, or like resuming, getting put into the background and coming back, and the view model should not be killed. So the idea is to separate the lifecycle from your business logic, and you can use live data if you have any internet connections coming into your app. So if you have any network requests, you should put it through live data and update the view model through that. So it's kind of a reactive pattern. So reactive means your application logic and your views, they react to data that's changing in your data source. So I can post a link on the event page on the latest recommended Android architectures. I will just take a note here for that. Okay. Charlita asks, how about dev teams? Can you explain if there is a new major task to do, how the things are being divided into subtasks? Is Google mostly using PR-based open source model for dev? Okay. Yeah, I can go into details on this one. So usually when we have a new feature to develop, we have product managers. They come up with ideas to implement, and we will have like a bunch of these ideas in a list, and we will have a meeting, and let's say I'm interested in working on one of those things. I will say, okay, I'll take this one, and then I will, so let's say I'm working on this feature now, and I will talk more with that product manager and figure out what exactly needs to be done, and if you want to do it in phases, break it down. Then if this requires collaboration with different teams, so for example, when I'm working on the Google Home, there's a hardware team who work on the hardware of the Google Home device, and there's a cloud team who work on the backend servers, and then there's the app team who works on the Android apps. So if I'm leading the feature, I will first create a design documentation, which kind of lists like what we need to do and what the architecture would look like for that specific feature. Then it will go through a review process where I will host a review for the cloud teams, the hardware teams, and the product managers to review my design. And if everyone agrees on it, we will break down that feature into like small, tiny pieces. Okay, so actually we will break it down into like 3 major pieces for hardware, cloud, and app. And for myself, I prefer to break down my features into really tiny pieces. So I usually break, like for a medium-sized feature, I will break it down to like 30 or 40 smaller features. And So the reason why I do this is so I can work on one small thing at a time when I have a small amount of time. Sometimes it can be difficult to find a lot of hours in one block where you can focus and do a lot of work. So the way I solve that problem is by breaking down problems into smaller pieces where I can work on like one tiny thing at a time, and then I can make like steady progress even if I don't have a chunk of time available. So the pull requests, so we do have something similar to pull requests. All code that goes into the Google code base has to be reviewed and has to be approved. So reviewer means someone who knows what you're working on reviewed the code and made sure like it's working, it has proper testing, things like that. And then approved means someone who knows the language that you're writing code in has approved that you haven't made any errors in the code that you're writing, and it follows the best practices for that language. Also, approval, you have to also get approval for the person who is the owner of that code base. So that's how the pull request process looks like at Google. Let's see this. Where, okay, I guess we have a little bit more time, so let's try to answer some more questions. What does the next 5 years look like in the company for you? I want to try to get into like roles where I can have more impact, and yeah, I actually don't have like a 5-year plan. Just keep improving myself and trying to get more impact. What would it take for one to work at a Google data center? I mean, it depends on what you want to do at a data center. I don't really know without knowing like a specific role. Okay, Mohammed asks, I am a beginner to computer science. Could you tell us what kind of basic things will grow up as a good software engineer, and what are the tasks we need to complete? So in order to grow as a software engineer, I think you should write a lot of code, and you should also read some good code. I think it's mostly writing like a medium-sized application all by yourself. It will improve your coding a lot, and make sure you keep working on it for a while, because sometimes when you work on a project for like a year or two, you can see like where you're improving. So you will look at code that you wrote like a year ago, and you will definitely feel that you improved since then. That's a good way to improve your skills. Satish asks, could you please explain the process of handling application security at Google? So for most applications, the software engineers who writing the code is responsible for the security, and yeah, so you have to be aware of like security, performance, some basic user experience stuff to like be a good software engineer. And for specific projects, if security is like very important, they also have software engineers who specialize in information security. There will be a team of those software engineers taking a look. Google has a separate team of those people who specialize in security. I don't know the specific steps on what they do in the security process, but I know at Amazon I did a security review. It was like a month's work. We created a document with where all the user actions and third-party actions can come in, and we did static analysis on our code to see if there's any potential bugs that might have a security risk. We also went through all the dependencies we have to see if there are any risks there, and in general collaborated with another security researcher on our architecture to see if there are any vulnerabilities. Okay, Microsoft says, Kasun asked a question. Microsoft says they're supporting more FOSS. What's Google's opinion on this? How Google will work supporting free and open source projects in future? So I can't say what Google's opinion is on Microsoft. So, I mean, my personal opinion is as long as someone is supporting more FOSS, it's a good thing. Open source is a good thing, and anyone supporting that is a good thing, regardless of which company it is. I think Google is already supporting a lot of open source development, and Google, and you can go to opensource.google.com, I think, to see more about how Google handles open source. I can post that link in the event too. Let's see. Final advice for aspiring engineers dreaming to work at Google. I mean, I was one of them not a long time ago. I always wanted to work at Google. So I guess work hard on improving your skills and write a lot of code, and also read a lot of code by other people. I feel like a lot of people don't do this, the reading code part. You have to read code that's better than yours to understand how to improve your own code. So yeah, I think that should help. All right, I think okay, so I think it's about time to wrap it up, unless you guys have any other last minute questions. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up now. If you do have any questions, feel free to post it on the event page. I will come back and try to answer any questions that I missed. Also, feel free to send me a message if you want to ask any questions or any advice. I'll be happy to help. Again, I want to thank Charit for inviting me to do this. It's been a lot of fun. Okay, last question from Manuka. So I actually explained the interviewing process at Google when I started the talk. So you can probably go to the recording after the talk is done to find out what I said about that. So yeah, I'll wrap it up for now. Thank you so much for joining. All right, bye.